Good morning, Mr. Reed.
Oh, good morning.
How you
How are
doing,
you?
sir?
Oh, I'm doing good.
Okay, all right. My video feed, I'll get it going in a few minutes, but want to bring you on. Let me go ahead and let everybody see you. We're on Twitch and also on Facebook. So there we are right here. So everybody can see this young man right here. So I met you a while back. You was playing with Rob Noble, but
Hmm.
we did not know at the time that you did illustration for books. You sort of dabbed on it a little bit, but you really didn't let us know what you did. And I ran across Chris. Me and him are bowling buddies. We bowled for years together.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
yeah, we bowl. Ooh, yeah, we go way back bowling. And then he brought you up. I said, wait a minute, is that the same Bill Reed that plays in the band? Yeah, that's the same Bill Reed. He did your illustrations? Yeah, he did. I said, okay. All right. So you never know who's in that network that you're talking to. And that just your name just came up out of nowhere on what you was doing. So
Hmm.
it was a little brief background on you with your illustration before we get into your band, because I want to know about how'd you get started on writing, I mean drawing, illustration, and all that.
Um, I guess I was always drawing as a kid. I would get stuff from my teachers, and I would kind of add a face to everything, kind of Disneyize everything when I was drawing. And then I think I kind of got serious in high school, kept working at it, and trying to come up with my own style. And then oh, there you are. And
Yeah.
then uh, yeah, and through college, I went to college at UTSA and got a degree in fine art, bachelor's of fine art, printmaking and painting. And then I worked at a print shop for a few years. And then I worked at a t-shirt company, embroidery company, doing a lot of embroidery designs. And then I worked for an animation company for a few years, doing stuff for Cinemark, theaters, the Front Row Joe Cat animation stuff. I work with a guy named Tim Hodge that used to work at, well, now he works at Disney. Well, he used to work at Disney, but I learned with him. And then I went to work for several other companies like Apple Productions. We did the dancing answer cars back in the day. I did a lot of 3D animation with them. And for the last few years, I've been working at a company called AVTS, and I do a lot of graphics for them where we do large events, and I do the 3D graphics to show what an event will look like. But I've been drawing for years.
Now that 3D, I'm intrigued with that 3D stuff because that is an art by itself. So
Hmm.
is it one or two programs you use for that?
I use several, like Photoshop and Illustrator for the 2D part of it, and then I use a program called Lightwave 3D for the 3D part of it. And I can show you like one of the books I did was before I met Chris. Uh, it's called "There's a Dachshund in My Bed,"
Yeah.
and all the characters are hand drawn, but the room and the bed is all done in 3D. So I would position the characters, on the bed, but all the objects they're on are 3D.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the kind of stuff I've done with 3D animation and graphics.
Oh man.
But I did this book with this guy named Paul Epner, and then I did the second book for SeaWorld um, with Paul Epner. You might still find him there, but you might find him on Amazon. And then I did stuff for San Antonio Water Systems. They did a couple of educational books for kids about water conservation, like this one and this one here. And then I started doing the books for Chris Petard, these Carrot Top kids.
Yeah.
So
His
I've done like six of them. So there's the puppies, Cartoon World, uh, Fun in Mexico, uh, all the way to Alaska, uh, Land of the Midnight Sun, And the last one I did is Are We Really at the North Pole?
Yes.
So so that's what I've been doing with him.
So, where do you get, I don't know, like me, my creativity juices flow always at night and always on a Sunday when I know I gotta go to bed. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
all of a sudden it comes to you, and then you look up, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
Oh
So,
yeah.
how does yours come to you? Because I know there's a thing called writer's block or a block. Anything that you do, you get a block. And all of a sudden it opens up, and all of a sudden all the ideas come out. With you doing the illustration for books, that must be a massive download coming out your head on paper. So how does that work for you when you finally get that creativity, it comes in your mind of what you want? How do you go about that?
I don't know. It's kind of weird. Sometimes I can look like when I get a story like from Chris, I can look at it and I can see right away what I would do, you know. But every once in a while, I get stuff, and it does take a while for me to figure out what I would do. And like you say, a lot of my creativity does happen at night. I don't know, something about solitude. The stores are closed and you can't go anywhere, so so all you can do is sit around and think. And yeah, so it's very unpredictable. And the toughest part is when you're on a deadline and you've got to get something done. And it just I don't know. It's not. Sometimes you have to get away from it too. You have to just walk away, do something else. Like I say, do music, watch a movie or something, and get inspired by something else.
Yeah, but when I know that for me, when I walk away from something that's driving me bananas, I'll walk away. And I call myself putting that in the back of my mind, not thinking about it. But as I'm walking away, I'm thinking about it, thinking, and I start doing something else. Then all of a sudden, a light bulb goes off. I'll stop what I'm doing, go right back in there while it's fresh on my mind and do it.
Oh yeah.
I even had dreams at night that something would come to me. I would get up, walk in the office, do what I got to do, and go back to bed.
Oh, I do that too. I do that too. And now that you got phones with notes and stuff, I mean, sometimes I'll be driving and I'll come up with something, and I'll just talk into my phone, to try to remind myself of what I thought about.
Oh, I thought I was the only one who did that. I would do the same
Yeah.
thing. I'll be
Mhm.
somewhere and not close to the office, and I either text myself or talk into it and keep on going. You know what's funny though? When I get
Mhm.
home, I say, "Who left me a message?" It was only me who
Oh
left
yeah.
a message. But yeah, but when those days come up, and then like you said, the most important part was deadlines. Uh,
Hmm.
Sometimes deadline can eat you up because you want to hurry up and do it. But on the other hand, you want to make sure that it's the right thing. You want to make sure the quality is good.
Yeah. But sometimes deadlines work in a weird way that uh, it'll get right up to the deadline, and that just I don't know, for some reason that's an inspiration that you got to get it done. And sometimes I can knock out stuff faster at the last minute. I do like to do things well ahead of time. The only problem with that, sometimes if you're working with a client, uh, you give them stuff too early. They got too much time to change things over and over and over and over, and so that can be tricky too.
I hear you on that. They changes go along too much time. Like for instance, I was working somewhere and we were ordering food for all the techs. And the guy said, "Well, I'm gonna give him all these choices." I said, "No, don't give him choices. You drive yourself crazy." So he did it, drove him crazy. I said, either get a turkey sandwich or a brisket sandwich, one of those two. He was naming off chicken and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
but getting back to are you your own worst critic?
yeah, I think so. I think so. And when I was a kid, I almost didn't want anybody to see anything because it wasn't perfect enough. And just after a while, it took a while to kind of break away from that, to try to let stuff go and let people see it. And then you have to also get used to, or get tough about, people rejecting things. And it may not be for what you did. It just may not fit what they're looking for. And so I have like backlog of artwork and stuff, ideas that I've done for people that didn't work. And so I use them later on for something else. You might end up with, 5, 6, 7 ideas that weren't used, but they were still good ideas.
Do you have any drawings that you have that's sitting in the closet somewhere that you did that you hold on to look back later on? Or I would say maybe bloopers or something like that. Do you have an archive of that anywhere?
Well, I pretty much save everything I ever did.
Good. I was waiting. That's the right answer. A lot of people say I throw it away. I throw
Oh
it
no.
away. Yeah. So do
No,
you?
I have like doodles from college. I would, if a class was boring, I'd have all kinds of doodles on the sides of the book or my notebook. And if it was really engaging, I didn't. Have stuff like that, all my college artwork. And then during the pandemic, uh, I got my camera out and I took pictures of everything because I just didn't know what would happen to everything. So I tried to document all my artwork just to have it.
So have you ever fall back to some of that old artwork for the new stuff coming up now? Have you feel back and oh you got a block, but you go back to some of your old drawings? Do you ever do that sometimes?
Yeah, it gives me kind of inspiration for certain ideas. Yeah, I try to flip back through a lot of stuff, or just to show myself that I've changed or that I've gotten better. And some of my ideas were really well. I thought they were really good ideas, but maybe I didn't know how to execute them that well at the time. And over time, I learned more about shading and perspective, highlights, all that kind of thing. So sometimes I will sort of redo old artwork, just like people do with music. They'll have songs that they've written a long time ago, and they'll modify them depending on like new experiences. You know, the lyrics might get deeper because of what they lived through, or the chords. The chords change because of what they've listened to, what they've learned. So I do the same thing with my artwork.
Okay, all right. Tell us about your very first book you did, illustration, when you was hired for your very first book. What was it and how do you feel? How did you feel that time and saying, wow, I got picked for this?
Oh yeah, well, the first real one was that Dachshund book, and but I've done like my own little kids book, like for myself, like a demo book. But yeah, this was the first one, and this one seems like it took me like a year to do, because I was like learning how to do it, and then also like working with the author. He kept, having going back and forth to figuring out how to approve each page, and so I learned a lot from it. So every book I've done since has gotten easier and a little bit faster, but then I make it more complicated because I know how to do more stuff, and I'll take more time to perfect things. So, but that first book, yeah, it took a while to figure out.
Oh, so when he called you and asked you want to do a book, did you say me? You really you want me?
Well, what it was another music crossover. This guy, Paul Epner, he was a well, he's an author, but he would go to schools and do school presentations, and he needed music for his show because he had like a magic uh, lunchbox that he would control with a remote control, and it would dance around and light up, and it would interrupt him when he was telling stories, and he had songs for each show or each book that he had. So a friend of his said, "Hey, Bill could write some songs for you." So I wrote some songs for one of his shows, and then when he came over, he saw some of my drawings and said, "Hey, I don't like my illustrator. Do you think you may be interested in illustrating a book?" And so that's kind of how it came along. It was a kind of a self-published book with another partner of his, and actually the other partner built the electronics and stuff for his show, and so that's how I got into it, by doing his book. And then he actually got me into doing school visits. So I would my school visits were different than his. His was more like a Don Rickles thing, where he's talking about the book, and the book and the lunchbox would interrupt him, and he would dance and sing and wear hats and run around the room. My show was more about drawing and singing. I'd have a big easel, and I would draw and sing, and then I'd tell the kids about artwork with the projector, and and then I would get them to draw with me. So it was a different kind of show, but that's what got me into doing the books, was doing music for his show.
Oh, wow. That's something else. So have you been contacted now by other writers?
Yeah, every once in a while. But I mean, I found out like with I think it's the Society of Children Book uh, Illustrators and Writers. The proper way is to really submit your artwork to a publishing company or several publishing companies, and then they'll may assign you to a artist. I mean, to a author. And same thing with authors that they should submit their stories to different companies, and they will assign a illustrator. That's the traditional way. The way I did it was with the independent, self-publishing company. But yeah, I have been approached here and there.
So I take it that when you and Chris collaborate together, y'all have that that chemistry,
Oh
that
yeah.
that 1-2 punch. Because
Hmm.
it was bragging about you, and I said, I know Bill Reed. Is it the same Bill Reed? He's bragging about you, and we were talking, and he's told me all this book is based on my two kids. That's what he
Hmm.
was saying and all that. But I looked at the work, the illustration that you did. That sort of brought me back to old school, watching cartoons and stuff on how they drew everything. It wasn't nothing now on a computer you do it. They drew every picture, every framework, and all that. And when I seen your drawing, that reminded me of that. Have you ever done anything like that? Frame by frame?
Oh yeah, that's what I did at it was a place called Wilming Reams Animation, and we did stuff for Front Row Joe. Now I think it's computer or CGI, but we were doing it by hand, and I did several commercials with them. Uh, some of them were for out of town companies, but it was frame by frame. Um, we would scan the artwork in. We draw it on paper, but we scanned it in, and then we would ink it. At least that's how it used to be. Then we moved over to doing it with coloring it in the computer, but you still drew it by hand.
Yeah.
And even Disney did that. They for a while they did everything by hand, where people would ink onto cellophane and then paint on the cellophane, and then by the time the 101 Dalmatians came along, Xerox machines were out, so they were using Xerox to Xerox the drawings, and then they inked that made it a little bit faster. So every couple of years another innovation would come along. But even for the CGI stuff, uh, lots of times they will get people to draw the basics moves first, and then the CGI people will follow that. I mean, it's a combination. Sometimes it's motion capture, sometimes it's just hand drawing. And it depends on the style. Like Warner Brothers kind of style is more zippy and not super realistic, where Disney tries to be much more realistic and flowing.
Yeah.
So you need different techniques for what you're doing.
I, I got a question. Doing hand drawings for each move, how time consuming is that?
Oh, very time consuming. I mean, when we did the Cinemark Theater thing, it was like three animators working on that for 6 months for like a 3 minute animation. You know, so it takes a while. There's a lot of planning. You got to do the recording, uh, syncing. Somebody's got to sit there and figure out all the lip sync. Now they have software that can convert your lip sync. It's much faster. They've got this Adobe software called Animate, and another one called Character Animator that I'm trying to learn more about, and it makes it a lot easier and faster than it used to be.
So when we seen those cartoons back in the days, they really had to sit down there and do them cartoons all in, I would say, at one time to keep on going, because it was new cartoons almost every week. It
Oh
seemed,
yeah,
and imagine the staff on that putting that together, come out with new cartoons. I always go back to Bugs Bunny.
oh yeah,
Bugs Bunny was when he was dancing and all that. I said, how can they do that?
oh yeah.
That took a lot of time and effort. And back then, they didn't have the software to sync the voice and all that.
No, you had to listen to it, recording. And when I started doing it, we did the same thing. You're listening to it on a like a movieola thing, and you're doing the slow motion, and it sounds like a monster. You're like, and you're trying to find every syllable, and you write it on the frame, what frame it happens on, and it was very time consuming. And they'd had I'm sure they had staff of 100 people probably working on these cartoons, not to mention the musicians. I mean,
Yeah.
they would have a full orchestra. Somebody would score it to the animation, or vice versa. Sometimes they do the music and animate to the music. It was a very collaborative thing.
Boy, I was sitting down there, these poor people talking about fingers hurting. I remember I was talking to somebody who was a reporter for when they did the Indianapolis race there. They do it every year, Memorial Day. And
Hmm.
before typewriters came out, they had to hand write everything. They didn't go back to the office and type. He said his fingers are so sore from
Hmm.
all that. So I would imagine for them writing all those things by hand, yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah, a lot of sore fingers back then in their days.
Oh yeah, you had to build up some stamina to do that.
And then when computers came out, they had that thing called what, corporal, whatever, called a tunnel.
Oh yeah, carpal tunnel.
Carpal
Yeah,
tunnel with wrist and now just plain exhaustion, sitting down there doing everything. But no, not that. It's learn all new software that comes out that's helping
yeah,
it now. But you gotta know that software. When you
yeah.
when you said Adobe Illustrator and all this, I dabble with that a little bit, but that's a little bit out of my league. I use it every once in a while when I need to, but
Mm.
that software is powerful.
Yeah, and you just have to stay with it. Even if I get away from something, if I let it go like a couple weeks, I still have to remember certain things again. You know, uh, and then a lot of them have a similar logic, but different brands will do stuff differently just because of the copyrights. And you got to figure out, now where's this button? And even the same software will change year after year. It's like they're trying to improve it, but they move stuff around. It's like, where's this thing I used to use all the time? They moved it, they put it over another menu, and so it's tricky to stay with that stuff.
I
But
remember I remember I learned how to with my Adobe software, to remove the background. It was so much easier on the earlier one, click, and it was not. Now the latest one out, do this, do that. I said, forget it. I mean, it just drove me bananas. I mean, they changed. I mean, it's an improvement, but
Mhm.
it works with your knowledge on how well you know the product and just going all over that. I love Adobe, but I don't think it loves me.
Yeah,
To put it
yeah.
like,
Well, you got different people that want it different ways. It's because the problem is, a lot of these softwares, you can do stuff multiple ways, and so there's no wrong way to do it. I mean, so sometimes a developer will fix it for people that like it a certain way, and then you piss off the other people that like it at doing it another way.
yeah,
It's and then the next version they might try to please the other people, and
yeah.
then you piss off the other ones that you changed and that liked it. So it's tricky.
I got this software I use for when I um do commercials and all that stuff that I use. I did something by accident one day. I had three different voices in there. It was all my voice, but all sound like different people. I
Mhm.
I did it by accident. To this day, I can't figure out how I did it.
Oh, that happens to me.
Oh, that looks good. Then you turn around and say, how did I do that? I can't
Yeah.
recreate it. It's one of those things. So if anybody want to write a book or anything, what do you think be the first steps they need to do to write a book?
Well, um, like there's a place called, I think it's the Society of Children's Book Illustrators and Authors. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but I think there's a website for that Society of Children's Books Illustrators and Writers, and that can give you a lot of tips. If you join that, you'll learn basically how you should present your books or your stories. Like it's sort of more restrictive for authors because you're supposed to submit it to one publisher and wait for them to say yes or no, and then move it to another publisher. Where illustrators can send their stuff to all kinds of publishers, and they'll they'll assign you to an author. Um, and it's good to just read other books, look at other books, and see how other people do them. Don't copy them, but at least get a feel for the form. Um, and I used to go to meetings in town. I don't know if they still do, but they would have these Society of Children's Book Illustrators and Authors meetings, and you'd see how other people do it. Like I did it with a self-publishing thing. You can do it self-published, and that's probably easier to do now than it used to be.
Yeah.
Because like when I did the this first Dachshund book, uh, you couldn't really do small runs. I mean, this we had to do. I think he did 1,000 books or something, and he had to get them from China, and they came over on a boat and all this kind of stuff, and it took a long time for to get them done. Now there's more self-publishing companies out there that will do it. They may not be as cheap, but they'll do shorter runs, so you don't have a garage full of books.
Yeah, that's true. That's a nightmare. You wake up in the morning, you look in the garage. I still got these books after 2 years.
Yeah.
No. All right, let's go ahead and switch on us. Uh, you play in a band, probably in a couple of bands.
Yeah.
And you do keyboard, and what else do you do?
Well, I started with trumpet, and then I went to valve trombone, and I play drums, at least some basic drums. But I got into keyboards kind of in the '80s when synthesizers were coming along, and I just got into programming and sequencing, and so I do a lot of that.
So how hard was it for you to switch over when they came out in the 80s with all the new stuff? Was it easy to do or a learning curve?
Almost like this Adobe software. Every keyboard had a different logic to how you did it. Different buttons or menus. But I always thought it was just fun to figure out. The tricky part was it was kind of expensive. Every couple of years they come out with something that's bigger, sounded better, had more sounds. So you wanted to get that one, and then you figure that one out. Then another one would come out. But it was I don't know, it was very entertaining to me. And I mean, I had been in bands before, and it was just kind of frustrating that try to keep a band together and someone would quit and got to start all over, get another guy, and then they would quit and got to get another guy. But with sequencing and stuff, at least for me, I never lose the songs that I learned. I
Yeah,
can keep building and building, and it's great with a live band. It's better, I think. But every time you lose a guy, it's like, well, you might lose, 20% of the songs you do because that's the guy that played this part the best or sang it the best. But then you add somebody new, and it's like, oh, he can't do those songs, but we can add these other ones because he's really good at this or she's really good at this.
right.
So it's fun, but it's frustrating in a different way.
Yeah. On the keyboards, somebody brought this question up to me when I told I was gonna have you on. Is it the same amount of keys that's on the regular piano?
It depends on which one you buy. Um, like this one up here is a 61 key, and the one down here is like a 49 key. And I have an 88 key that I have for certain gigs, but 88 is what a real piano has. And you can buy different ones. I consider myself more of a synth player than a real piano player. I'm just pretty good at noodling around and hearing parts and figuring them out, where other people are very good at playing a full piano, solo piano kind of thing. I'm almost more of a programmer than a real piano player.
Okay. Um, Black keys. Let's talk about black keys.
Okay.
The reason why I'm bringing this up because a lot of the spiritual music back in the days were played on the black keys.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, they used the black keys for that because that was one I think Amazing Grace is one of them that's played on black keys.
Oh.
What I heard. And they focus on the black keys. And yeah, I forget who it was that started playing on the black keys with a lot of gospel songs back in the days because
Mm.
when they came over, when we were brought over, not came over, we were brought
Yeah.
over. um, when they started doing the music and stuff and everything, everybody know that most music with Black American today started off as gospel,
Hmm.
and a lot of people came from gospel into R&B and the blues. So
Hmm.
it's all gospel all in one. But the Black Keys was the one that they focused on. It was an easier one to play, but like the boogie woogie.
Oh yeah.
The boogie woogie, you look at it, you mainly tapping on the Black Keys.
Hmm.
But when you are arranging a new song that you're doing, I guess the question I'm looking for, what is the tone that comes out the Black Keys that's um a lot stronger and better than on the white keys?
Um, I don't know. I mean, usually the black keys are used for passing chords for the flats and sharps. Uh, but they can be a kind of a scale in their own. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. Um, hmm. But say the question again.
The Black Keys, like I say, was back in the days, people used Black Keys. But does the Black Keys come out with a stronger sound when you use it than the white keys if you want to write a song?
Um, I don't know because I guess I do stuff in whatever key fits the tune. But they're easier to hit because they're right on top. I mean, they're what you hit first. But I've noticed like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis use it a lot for like Janet Jackson. And then white keys you could still do similar.
Yeah.
So I think black keys are just they're more accessible, and I guess if you're not looking, you can feel them first.
Okay. Hope the sound come out right when you feel them first.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like we were kids, the first song or call us up playing piano was the Boogie Woogie and Chopsticks.
Oh yeah.
Those are the first two songs. And if you could play that, oh, these two little fingers right there were gone.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
stuff. So those something they do. So what songs have you written?
Oh well, not well. I've done a lot of tunes, but they're mostly I haven't really tried to publish anything really. Um, but like I've worked on some like actually like right now I'm working on with Apple Productions uh, a commercial for Wainwright Lawyer and another guy named Montesi. I think he's in another city, and I've done like a commercial for them, and uh, and that's kind of tricky too because they have like a 30-second and a 15-second, and you got to write it to fit both of those timings, and then try to squish the words in down or squish them down to fit a 15. Uh, but they're a little bit more corny, kind of fun songs.
Yeah,
I even worked on the Ansira dancing car thing, like the Think Ansira theme. I
yeah,
worked on it, but I gave them a lot of demos, but they went with a different version. I think at the time Santana Smooth was big, and so they got somebody who was better at that kind of style, and so that Ansira commercial had more of that smooth feel with the guitar and the percussion. But I helped them get into the right direction. So that's what a lot of what I do is. It's like pre-production, like show them the direction you could go, and like even with the when I do graphics for this company AVTS, I show them show the client what a show will look like in 3D, if it's going to have columns or if it's going to have blue lighting, red lighting. I show the client what the possibilities are, and they can change it without spending a lot of money on the site. So
yeah.
that's what I've done musically too, is help uh, do demos of things that go on to be the real thing.
Okay. So you're in bands.
Hmm.
Um, you play at certain places. How is that feeling? You get up there playing on the keyboard with a band, and what chemistry do you look for Because I know it's got to be chemistry in there with the band for y'all to almost like not even look at each other and know what direction to go. So, how do you go about that when you're playing in the band?
Well, it's different with each band, and each band has a different chemistry. Um, there's certain vibes in certain bands. Some bands are more tense. Some bands are more laid back. Um, sometimes, you know, you're looking at the weak link in the band. It's like, I mean, he may not be bad, but that person may not be the strongest person in the band. And sometimes you might be the weak link in the band. It's like, oh, I gotta keep up with these guys. It can be very dynamic, So I like it to be in different groups because I would get kind of burned out of just doing one style or being with one set of guys. And they might do a lot of stuff, but I eventually feel limited that I can only do this stuff that they know that they like, where I could do stuff with somebody else and do different stuff. And then I'll do a solo or duet where I can even branch out more and do things that none of the bands will do.
Yeah. Well, I heard you play. Sound good to me. So, what do you like? You like jazz or R&B?
Well, I'm a child of jazz and pop. My dad and mom played jazz records all the time, but we lived on Air Force bases. Oh, that's the other connection with Chris, is that my dad was in the Air Force and he was in the Air Force. We lived in Alaska and he lived in Alaska, but at different times.
Yeah.
But my dad would always listen to jazz, but we'd always just listen to pop radio wherever we were. So I like a lot of pop stuff, and it wasn't until we came back to San Antonio in like '74 that I got into Motown stuff. I never really listened to it too much. Uh, I played in for a while, I played in some Tejano bands, and a lot of those guys were all about Motown. It's like I had to catch up. So it had a very unusual mixture that I got into, but jazz and then smooth jazz. But I wouldn't consider myself a jazz player, but I like to improvise.
Okay. So, what inspired you to play your instruments? The number of instruments you play. Who inspired you to play the keyboard, and what else said you played?
The trumpet and the valve trombone and drums. Um, I'm not sure. Well, I know I especially in the '80s, I loved Herbie Hancock, Parliament Funkadelic. That had a lot of synthesizer going on, and I think that's what pricked my ears, got me going into synth stuff. Was like Parliament Funkadelic, Bootsy, and all that. But I also liked a lot of rock music, with Kendricks and Kiss and Rush and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I just have a very eclectic background, and I think that's why I like sequencing and programming songs, because I can go to almost any style and at least try to emulate it. I know some styles are not going to be perfect, but I get to touch almost any style that I like.
So I would say, being a bet man, I can name one song that you probably like. Since you got your keyboard synthesizer there, I would say Cool in the Gang Summer Madness.
Oh, I haven't done that one, but I do. Isn't it? But didn't Fresh Prince do a version of that? Summertime, or is that the same thing?
That's not the same thing. Let me see here. Let me see here. Let me pull
I don't
it.
think I do Summer Madness. No.
Let
Well,
me
that
see
was like Isley Brothers or something, right?
if I pull this up.
Summer Madness, right?
Yes.
No, I do more of the pop stuff, more of their top 40-ish stuff.
Yeah. Maybe you can hear this. Let me go ahead and play a little bar of it so you can.
I don't know if I can tell. Kind of hear it. It's a little muffled. Huh, I don't hear it.
Yeah, that's the that's part I'm talking about. Hear that?
Oh yeah, okay. I think I like that one, but I don't know that one.
Yeah,
I've never played that one.
that's cool to gain some advantage. I figured that you would turn around, sit back there, and start playing it. I thought maybe that'd fit you right there.
No, I don't have that one,
Okay.
but I've done this one.
Summertime, time to reach back in the mind. Summertime, just sit back and be back time. Stuff like that.
Look at you. We got a free concert going on here, y'all.
Oh,
I like that. I like that. I like that. See, that's unique about our culture. We could play and sing anytime. Now, there's back in the days, there were studio performers and performers. Yeah, studio performers, they utilized all the equipment in the studio to sound good. But when they went out and did a live show, they sound like crap. I'm gonna tell you, that's how they sounded.
yeah,
Uh,
sometimes.
it was like when that first studio came in and people were using the reverb and using all that stuff. Oh man, then they go out there and do it live. And say, what is that they're singing? That's their hit, really? You know. So what I'm saying is, but you come out singing that, come out singing it. That's what I'm talking about. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, they got better technology now that helps you to do stuff like that. Like even back in the day, the Beatles had amazing records, but after a while they couldn't perform them live because it would just take too many people, a whole all this orchestra, and sometimes you would need the whole orchestra for like one song or one part of a song,
Yeah.
and they had multi overdubs and all that. Now you can do it, but back in the day it was hard to recreate a lot of that in live.
Yeah, that brings to my point, Millie Vanilli, they got kicked out for lip,
Oh yeah.
but then found out later on that half the artists up there singing the show was lip syncing because all that moving around and jumping, like for instance, Janet Jackson comes to mind.
Oh yeah.
And but yeah, she did good, but yeah, out of breath and come on now. You can't
Yeah.
around do 10 backflips and still be on key. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah. But it's like if you watch the old Soul Trains, the very first ones they were playing live, but I think after a while they realized that some people, like you said, they just don't sound good live.
Yeah,
So it kind of switched over them and American Bandstand. So everybody was doing it with tracks, and so that's how Milli Vanilli got away with it so long because it was the standard for so long.
yeah.
And I think that kind of opened it up to where people, it's like, okay, we got to show that we can really sing or play.
I think when you brought up Soul Train, I don't know if people realize this. Soul Train started off in Chicago
Yeah.
on a small UFH station called WFLD. I remember that. Yeah, VHS and UHF, and that came on UHF. You had to get this funny little bow tie antenna in order to pick it up. But it's
Hmm.
up in Chicago, and boy, I look at some of the footage back then. It's funny looking at that. Y'all really dressed like that?
Oh
And
yeah.
they were having fun. And then they decided to move towards the West Coast, and they really took off. And then they got syndicated, and you're right. In the beginning, I remember James Brown went out there, did a whole show
Hmm.
myself on Soul Train. You know, you had some artists that went out there and just took over the whole show.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that because lip singing was out. They did it live, and believe it or not, some of the bands did it live sounded good.
Oh yeah. I think War. I think Cool and the Gang. I'm trying to think of some other ones I saw that
Yeah.
were really really good. But there are some bands that's like they don't quite sound as good. And it takes too many people. Like what was in the studio, like especially Motown. I mean Motown stuff.
Oh yeah.
You had whole orchestras and stuff, harps and things and vibes, and you couldn't drag that into a studio, real quick and get in and out.
Yeah, one thing about Motown, what they also did, what they didn't have, they made. You know, they used key,
Oh,
change, trash can. Nobody believed they did all. I remember I was talking to somebody the other day who was affiliated with Motown, well, a couple of years ago, and he was saying that they will play with the chains and all that stuff. They'll come home that day, their hands just be blistered and bloody from doing that all day, because they had to get it right.
mm,
And nowadays you don't have to do that.
yeah,
You get a jingle with a chain one time and you can loop it. Fine.
yeah,
But back in the days when those were hardworking artists back then, because they had to, and not only that, we had to go through segregation and all that stuff. I remember when they turned around, a black person's face could not be in front of a record album. It was always
oh,
a character or monkeys or something. I'm gonna use the word monkeys. That's what
yeah,
they do sometimes on because they didn't want white America to know that these are black artists. Come on now. That's all them kids were dancing off of back then.
yeah. Especially the jazz albums. I can look at all the album covers, and a lot of them were, of a lake or a bottle of tequila or something like that, and you didn't know what the artist looked like.
Right. And the stigma for jazz artists back then, a jazz artist could not sing. All they
What?
but yeah, it was a taboo that jazz artist was there to play jazz, no singing.
Oh,
And I
okay.
think George Benson sort of broke the mold on there when he came out Masquerade. He
Yeah,
probably was the first one, but that was the one that went number one when he sung that. So they said, oh, jazz artists can sing.
yeah.
So, and, it's a taboo out there on that right there, but it's all good. Now, not everybody. Now, I want to get into about sampling.
Oh, yeah.
Some of these people are coming out with these songs nowadays. Well, not nowadays, but back then when rap was coming out and they were doing samples, and they claim that they thought of this song. I listened to a couple of songs. Man, that song came out in the 50s. You know what
Mhm.
they did their research and went back, listened to all this old music and turned around. That's where the sampling came in. Now, the other one is you had to have a hook
Mhm.
song to sell. You may hear that hook 30 times in that song, but what was the lyrics?
Oh, yeah.
So what do you think about that, the samples and the hooks that they were doing?
Um, I think it was cool in some ways because it brought back old songs, and I think it probably really happened more with the scratching and stuff, and with the records and kind of looping the records because they were getting their parents' old records and putting them out there, and you can maybe feel funny about them just using it, but it could also open up kids to an older style of music if they go back and research like where did that come from?
Yeah.
This, every generation doesn't know what the old generation did. And I mean, I remember listening to being on these Air Force bases, just listening to pop radio, like Linda Ronstadt. I thought all those were original songs, but she was doing like 50s and 60s songs,
Mhm.
black artists and other artists that came along. So it's kind of a tradition. It was just more of an electronic tradition of sampling and scratching and looping with records. Uh, I think it's cool. I mean, I remember George Clinton thought it was cool. He always feels like to get relevant, you got to stay with what the kids are into. And he even put out a CD called "Sample Some of This and Some of That," where he actually gave a whole CD full of loopable, sampleable stuff. So he embraced it.
Yeah. But you're using my stuff, make sure I get paid.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
You know,
We mentioned that about getting kind of looking at time. I'm getting paid. A lot of the artists back in the days signed the wrong contract because they didn't get any royalties.
yeah.
And that hurt them. So nowadays the artists are smarter that they're doing their own thing and they're doing the rights for their music to everything, which I think that's a smart move. But they sort of used some of the black artists back then, and they was making all that money. Claimed they was making all that money, and now the same artists, if they were back in the days, if they didn't do things right, they're on the streets, and I think that's pitiful.
Yeah, that kind of happens with a lot of corporations, with the music industry, and you see it in the television industry. You know, I'm a big Star Trek guy, and you can see how, you know, those guys when they first run the Star Trek, you know, they didn't get the rights to. Well, nobody back in the day didn't think it would last past, you know, 2 reruns, and that was it. You know,
Yeah,
and same thing with a lot of music. Sometimes you think, well, you might be a one hit wonder, and you'll never hear it again. You know, at the time, nobody knew that some of these would just be, you know, forever songs, forever shows. So at least people now are a little bit more smart about trying to hold on to the rights to the songs. I mean, in that Cadillac Records movie, I think Chuck Berry he won his suit against the Beach Boys, and he had the rights to his music. And I think Ray Charles had the rights to his recordings. So some guys got smart about it.
yeah. I was gonna bring that up, your emblem up there, Star Trek. I was checking you out. Beat me up. And
Oh
beat
yeah.
got it. Yeah, I'm a Trekkie too. I love watching all those movies when they come out and everything.
Mhm.
But you're right about the rights and all that stuff. One last question. Where do you see Bill going the next 10 years from now?
I'm not sure. Um, I always try to keep evolving, and I've always worked for other companies, but like since COVID, uh, I haven't had a solid full-time job. I was working with AVTS for about almost 20 years, and almost never was out without a full-time job. But now I'm doing a lot of different varied things. So I kind of like it. I may be just doing more of the same, more of the illustration, music, or combinations of all that. Uh, Even though I do like the steady paycheck and the insurance and all that, but it may be more of an independent, you know, freelance kind of a company. At least that's what I'm thinking. But you know, if I get hired somewhere, I'll still do all this stuff. I mean, I always did music and art on the side as freelance thing. Now I'm kind of doing it sort of a full-time freelance thing. So probably more of the same, just hopefully bigger and better things.
Well, from seeing your books, reading your books and your music, it's nothing but up for you, my brother.
I
Nothing
hope
but
so.
up for you. You know, doing what you're doing. All right, Bill, we appreciate you coming on board today. And we're gonna check back with you and see where you at with your next book. Please let us know your next book coming out so we can help you out and tell everybody about it on the radio.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, you take care, Bill.
Okay, you too.
All right.
Mhm.